Okay, to help visualize the events in the fictional world in D&D game, we recommend the use of miniature figures in the battle grid. Battle grid, such as the one provided in Dungeon Master Guide, consists of a grid of 1-inch squares. Each of those squares represent a 5-foot square in the game world. Okay, now that's a game world type thing in that type of sense. From that, that's a 5-foot square type thing in that type of sense. Immediately type thing, that's game. Game consists of a grid of 1-inch squares. Each of these squares represent, on page 133, a 5. So I'm going to take out a 5 type thing in that type of sense. That's 5. What 5-foot square in the game world? That's 5 type thing in that type of thing. So now that's one square. That's 5 feet. And that's one square type thing in that type of thing. And in that type thing in that type of sense, that's one square. That's 5. Now in that type thing in that type of sense, that is 10. That is, in that type of thing, that's 15. And in that type of thing, in that type of sense, that's 20. And in that type of sense, that's 25. And in that type of sense, that's 30. That's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 to 10, 15, 20, taking that type of sense. And the next number up in 5, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is 25, taking in that type of sense. So it's 25 and it's 20. So that's 5 steps. That's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 5 plus 20, taking that 25 in that type of sense. So now that's 5, taking that type of sense from one square. We're going to add that to another square, taking that type of sense. That's 5, and that's 10, taking that type of sense. Plus, we're going to add another 5 to it, taking that type of sense. That's 15. Plus, we're going to add another 5 to it, taking that type of sense. Right there, taking 15 plus 5, and that's 20, taking that type of sense. And we're going to add another 5 to that, taking that type of sense. And that's 25, taking that type of sense. And we're going to add another 5 to that, taking that type of thing. And that's 30, taking in that type of sense. Right then and there. Now, I don't know how many of those that I took, taking that type of sense. That's 1. That's 2, taking that type of thing. That's 3, taking in that type of sense. That's 4. And in that type of thing, in that type of sense. That's 5. And that's 6. Right then and there, taking in that type of sense. And there we go. 6 steps type thing in that type of sense, and 30. Now you turn back to page 9 here. That's 13 type thing in that type of sense, and that's medium type thing, and that's human base. That's the first dot type thing in that type of sense. That's the first dot is medium, so I don't see it then in that type of sense. That's one dot. That's medium type thing. I don't see that. Now I take another step type thing in that type of sense. I'm going to push the 1 down type thing. And that's using a number line. The next step from 1 is 1, taking that type of sense, is 2. So that's 2 on a number line, taking that type of sense. That's the second dot, taking in that type of means. Now the second dot, human baseline speed is 20 feet. And that's 30 feet, taking that type of sense. The same 30 we got on the calculator. And that 30, taking that type of sense, was 6 steps. So now in that, that's 1 step, taking in that type of sense. Now let's see, that's 6. And we're going to take this 1, taking in it here, to match up to it, type thing. That's 1, taking in that type of sense. That's 2 steps, taking in that type of, no, let's take the whole alleyway type thing. That's 1, and then that's 2. We're gonna step first step, taking in that type of sense. That's the second step there, taking in that type of thing. That's the third step. The third step still does not match up to the number 6, and that's the fourth step, taking in that type of sense. And that's the fifth step, taking in that type of sense. And in that, that's the sixth step, taking in that type of sense. And that's how you move in AD&D, except for now the dwarf type thing is 20 type thing in that type of sense, so they move 4 steps. So now that's 1, 2, 3, and 4 type thing in that type of sense, compared to the human one type thing in that type of sense, or the elf one in that type of thing, who move at 30. Now, to see that type thing in that type of sense, we're going to take that type thing here, in that, we're going to take that off type thing in that type of sense, and in that type thing, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4 type thing in that type of sense. Now, that's plus Constitution, and that's minus Constitution type thing. That's medium, that's dwarf base speed, that's the third one. Dwarf base land speed is 20 feet type thing in that type of sense. That's right. Now that's +2 dexterity, medium. Elf base land speed is 30 feet type thing in that type of sense, and they're medium creatures type thing, and that means. So from that type thing in that type of sense, you have to maintain the medium and their speed, and you can look into that later. It's 30 feet type thing in that type of sense, and it's 5 foot per 1 square. 30 foot divided by 5/1 feet per square. 35 times 1 square per 5 feet type thing in that type of sense, because that inverses. That's 5/1 to 1/5. Square goes to the top, and over feet type thing in that type of sense. That's 30 squares divided by 5 feet type thing in that type of sense. That's A and B type thing in that type of sense. It's not complicated. Now, the 5 is on top type thing in that type of sense. That's 5 on top type thing in that type of sense. And that's 1 over 5 type thing in that type of thing. See there? Now side by side type thing in that type of sense. They inverted themselves type thing in that type of sense. That's red to white and white to red type thing in that type of sense. It's not complicated. Now that 1/5 type thing in that type of sense is the part that's on that. 30 times 1 is 30 type thing in that type of sense, divided by 5. Then 30 divided by 5 is 6 type thing in that type of sense. And that's 6 squares of movement type thing in that type of sense. Provided giving it 2 squares or something like that in that type of sense to train up to it, and then have 4 left over, that's sure. That's 30 divided by 5 type thing in that type of sense. That's 6 squares. And that's it. And thanks for listening type thing in that type of sense, and that's movement type thing in AD&D.